Welcome to the Media Pros Show, the show that gives you quick, simple tips to grow your business by serving as an expert in the media. Learn how to get all the TV, radio, newspaper, magazine, podcast, and online interviews and media appearances that you want, and learn how to be great in those interviews. I'm Dr. David Geyer, orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine specialist, and media health and wellness expert. When I was an orthopedic surgery resident, when you're in your training after med school, before you actually practice as an orthopedic surgeon, you do a 5-year residency program. And where I did my residency program, you spend 15 months of your 5 years total working at the Med, which is one of the, at least at the time, was one of the largest trauma hospitals in the country. And as an orthopedic surgery resident at this trauma hospital, you're taking care of people with bone and joint injuries from car accidents and gunshot wounds and all other kinds of trauma. It was really, really busy, a really stressful 3 months of your year every year. And part of your work there, 1 day a week, is to see the patients that you took care of or you operated on for their follow-up visits. Now, the system may be a little different now, and this is probably less than ideal, but at least the way it worked back then is that if a patient had insurance, he or she would follow up with the attending surgeon that led that surgery. But if he or she didn't have insurance, then they followed up in the resident clinic. And as you can imagine, at one of the largest, busiest trauma hospitals in the country, those clinics were really busy. We did clinic 1 day a week, and the 4 of us on each of the 2 trauma teams would see in our 1 day a week clinic probably 150 patients in that day for 4 people. Really busy. And it would get, just patients would have to wait a long time. We'd get behind. And fairly frequently, patients would complain about having to wait 30 minutes or an hour for their appointment. And I'll never forget, one of my chief residents one year had a ready-made, ready-to-go answer whenever a patient complained about having to wait. He'd say, "You can either pay with money or you can pay with time." And I know that sounds awful. It is awful. But those words, "you can either pay with money or you can pay with time," applies to the media. So often I hear from doctors that don't feel that they have the time to get media interviews. And it's true not just for doctors, but any type of expert, whether you're an attorney, financial planner, accountant, real estate agent, chiropractor, veterinarian, physical therapist, personal trainer, any type of expert. You may feel that, hey, look, I've got a business, I've got a job that takes a lot of my time. I don't want to put in the time to do the outreach to get the interviews. It's not even just doing the interviews, it's lining them up. Is there another way to get interviews without having to do some of the work to land those interviews? Well, yeah, actually there is. And it's one that doctors a lot of times use, a lot of other types of experts use. Basically, you can hire a publicist or a public relations firm. Now, there are a lot of good reasons to work with a publicist or PR professional. But there's some drawbacks that you should know and you should consider as well. So in this episode and the next one, we're going to do basically a 2-part series on the pros and cons of working with a publicist. In this episode, we're going to talk about the benefits of working with a publicist. Next week, we're going to talk about some of the drawbacks. But there are a number of good reasons to work with a publicist. First of all, publicists have contacts and media relationships you just don't have. They likely know people at different TV stations or networks. They know people who work on different TV shows. They may know people at certain radio shows. They may know certain reporters or journalists at magazines or newspapers across the country. Maybe they know podcast hosts. And the way the situation works is they've gotten to know these producers, these journalists, reporters, writers over a long period of time. They've recommended experts to these media people, and hopefully those experts gave great interviews, were really helpful for those media people. It went well, so they learned to trust the publicist, because if the expert was good, that makes the publicist look good. So now if a publicist reaches out with a different expert, that those media people think, oh, hey, the last expert that he or she sent, that was a great interview. Maybe this attorney will be really good too. That really works well, especially at the national level, national TV, national radio. You're almost certainly more likely to get onto a national TV or radio show if you're presented by a publicist that people on that show have worked with than if you pitch yourself. So having contacts in media relations can be very, very helpful. Another benefit, many publicists specialize in certain niches. Now, I've worked over my probably 10 years of doing media interviews. I've worked with 3 publicists, 2 that didn't go very well and 1 that was fairly effective. The 2 that didn't go very well were a long, long time ago, 2012, 2013. And that's where I learned a lot of the drawbacks we're going to talk about next week. But the publicist that went well, that was a good experience, was in 2017. And ironically, it wasn't even one that I hired. It was a publicist hired by my book publisher. I had this book coming out, That's Gotta Hurt, The Injuries That Changed Sports Forever. And my publisher wanted to get more people to buy the book, obviously. And to do that, we would need to attract people that care about sports and stories in sports. So the publisher hires this publicist that specializes in getting interviews on talk radio shows and sports talk radio shows. So he worked to get me, it turned out to be about 30 interviews on some of the biggest talk shows and sports talk radio shows across the country, national shows and in the biggest market, shows I never would have been able to get without his help or without the help of somebody that specializes in getting radio appearances. It was really, really helpful. And there's publicists that specialize in just about anything. There are publicists that specialize in promoting dental practices and law practices. There's publicists that specialize in different media. There's publicists that specialize in getting you onto podcasts, or maybe it's network TV. And so that can be very, very helpful. Third benefit is working with a publicist, you'll get interviews, or almost certainly will get interviews. Maybe it's one interview, maybe it's a few interviews, but almost certainly they're going to get you interviews. But they can't guarantee getting you interviews. All they can guarantee is sending out contacts, sending out pitches to people in the media. And depending on your relationship and how your monthly fee works, that may be a certain number of hours they work per month doing that. It may be sending out a certain number of pitches, but they can't guarantee getting you interviews. But again, they most likely will get you interviews. Now, the question gets, and we'll talk about this in the next episode, but the question gets to, are those interviews actually helpful to grow your business? Some are, some won't. We'll talk about that a little bit more next time. Another benefit, and that's that you won't have to do any of the work. Now, this is probably the biggest reason I hear from physicians that they want to hire a publicist. Basically, they don't feel that they have the time to find media contacts to pitch and to develop topics and actually send out the pitches and to follow up when they don't hear back. They don't want to do any of the work. So they hire a publicist to do this. And it's not just doctors hiring publicists, even though tons do, but it's all different fields that are media experts. They hire publicists to get them the interviews. And they think, great, I won't have to do any of the work. I'll just show up and do the interview. Well, that's not exactly true. It is true that the publicist will do the work of actually sending out the pitch and writing the pitch. But you're going to spend a lot more time than you're expecting working with the publicist doing the pitching. And here's why. They're not doctors. They're not attorneys. They're not accountants or financial planners. They're publicists. You're going to spend a lot of time on the phone with your publicist answering whether a topic is right, something that you feel comfortable talking about, or writing out bullet points for your publicist to add to that pitch to make it more appealing and hopefully make it more successful. So yeah, they're going to be crafting the wording of the pitch and sending it out, but you're going to be doing a lot of the work, giving them information that then they use to turn around and pitch the media, more time than you think. So the idea that you're not going to do any work is not necessarily true, but yes, a lot of the grunt work they're going to do, the work of sending out the pitches, they are going to do. And finally, they are going to do what they can to help you perform well. They really will. You know, pros, cons, all the stuff we talk about, there's no question that they want you to do well in the media. If for no other reason than if you're great, then they develop that relationship, that trust on the side of the media, on the producer, the reporter, the journalist, whatever. If you're great, they're going to appreciate it. They're going to think that publicist, hey, every expert he or she recommends to me is going to be great because you were great. And it just helps their bottom line. It grows their publicity business, their public relations business. So they want you to do well. So when you start in your time working with a publicist, working with a PR firm, they should and almost certainly will take time to teach you the basics of being great in the media, teaching you things like how to look good or sound good in an interview, how to craft and create a message for your audience, how to create action steps or take-home points for the audience, how long your answers should be, body mannerisms, posture, gesture, where to look, how to act, and so much more. One of the things I do with the clients I work with one-on-one is that you and I figure out if working with a publicist is right for you and right for promoting your business. If it is, then we look to figure out what type of publicist would be best for you. If working with a publicist isn't best for you, then we work to figure out what media outlets and what shows and publications would be right for promoting your business. We work together to figure out specific people, specific reporters or hosts, producers of those media outlets might be interested in the information an expert like you could provide. We develop your pitch to potentially attract those media people. Then we help you prepare for your upcoming interview so that you're great in that interview and hopefully attract customers, clients, and patients, but also so that they ask you back for more and more interviews over and over and over. As always, please remember that all this information on these shows, these podcasts, in my coaching and on the Media Pros coaching website, this is not specific business advice. It's not medical, financial, legal advice. If you have specific business concerns, please talk to a professional in that area. But if you want to get more interviews and be great in those interviews and hopefully attract those ideal clients, customers, and patients and become the go-to expert in your industry, in your town, in your region, I can help you become a media pro. Go to MediaProsCoaching.com. Sign up on the homepage for a free 30-minute strategy session with me. We'll talk about your business and where you are in your business and what you're trying to achieve. Then we'll outline some quick, simple steps you can implement right away to start getting some media interviews and start working to achieve those business goals. While you're there, get your free copy of the Media Pros Interview Checklist. Very quick, simple list of things that you can do to be great in every interview. Some of the things that publicists teach you before you do your interviews, but these are things that you should try to do every single time because they will help you be great in your next interview. And hopefully you'll get asked back to do another interview, and that relationship continues for a long time. Finally, in your journey to becoming a media pro, I want to share a quote with you. It's a quote one of my speaking coaches, public speaking coaches, used to use, and I sort of adopted it since then because I think it's really great. It's from the Romanian sculptor of all people, Constantine Brancusi, and he said, "Create like a god, command like a king, and work like a slave."